58 people so far, 59 people, some reports, dead in Las Vegas.
Oh, fucking hell. Another reactionary gun grabber responding to the Las Vegas shooting. And it happens to be Thom Hartmann. That's two slaps to the balls in one move. Thankfully, I have a guest today. Say hi, Agnostic.
Hello, everyone. I hope all of you are ready for the slew of bullshit that's about to ensue.
Hundreds injured, numbers floating between 400 and 500. I mean, it's a massacre.
And it all happened in a gun-free zone. Looks like the proposal that this entire argument you're about to make is based on would only have exacerbated the problem, though in all honesty it probably couldn't have been any worse considering the circumstances.
It's just an absolute massacre. This guy was found to have 10 weapons of war.
Oh, and that's another thing that's happened since the Las Vegas shooting. The media and people particularly in the establishment crowd have started this weird thing where they aren't calling guns guns anymore, as if the gun control agenda wasn't Orwellian enough.
In his hotel room, just, kicked out the windows and just shot the place up. And so Republican Senator Pat Roberts tweets out, "God bless the victims of the terrible and senseless shooting in Las Vegas." But Pat Roberts votes against gun control.
Yes, of course, prohibition is how you stop the shootings, because, after all, that's how we stopped people from doing drugs.
I'm sorry, what about drugs now?
This is what I've never understood about the gun control argument. I mean, the idea of a gun ban, even in concept, doesn't make any logical sense. Your intention is to stop criminals from shooting innocent people because shooting an innocent person is in and of itself a crime, and you think that the best thing to do in order to achieve your goal is to make another law? You're trying to stop someone who has their mind made up about doing something criminal by making a law to try and stop them. And you honestly wonder why countries like the UK, with a totally disarmed population, have a higher violent crime rate than the US. Could you imagine a guy walking up to somebody with a gun and demanding their money, then the second person says, "Haha, you can't do that because armed robbery is illegal. Now you got an armed robbery and a second-degree murder."
This idea that we need to completely ban guns outright is asinine. Because as we all know, black markets have never been a thing. It's almost like if a person wants to obtain a certain item, they're going to get it, regardless of what it is, regardless if you make it illegal. So I don't think banning guns is going to fix any issues. Just might backfire on you, Creating more problems in the process.
Senator Richard Shelby tweets out, "Praying for the victims and the families of the victims involved in the tragic Las Vegas shooting. Thankful to the brave first responders." Yet Richard Shelby voted against any kind of rational gun control, limits on clips. Things that would still be just fine within the consideration of the Heller decision.
Kennesaw, Georgia has a city ordinance which requires every citizen to own a gun. There have been 0 violent crimes since 1982, when the ordinance was first signed into law. And prior to that, the town had a pretty regular crime rate compared to every other city in the country.
The limits on the size of magazines and on the just the whole spectrum of weapons of war, assault weapons.
People are entitled to any weapon they can get their hands on as a result of individual autonomy as long as the weapons are obtained legitimately. Not legitimately as in according to government law, legitimately as in you're not violating someone else's rights in the process of obtaining it.
Senator Orrin Hatch woke up this morning to a horrifying news out of Vegas, shocking and senseless. God bless the victims and their families. Well, thank you, Senator Hatch. Stop voting to put these kind of crazed weapons in the hands of these kinds of people.
Nuance, the methods of rationale, what are those?
Also notice what he said there, crazed guns. I'm sorry, I didn't know a gun could be crazed. You know what I would call crazed? Stephen Paddock. That's who I'd call crazed. That would be a more appropriate label to put on him than the tools he used.
Marco Rubio this morning. I'm praying for all the victims, their families, and our first responders in the Las Vegas Mandalay Bay shooting. This is Marco Rubio. Then why do you vote to allow these kind of weapons to continue to be on our streets?
All right, we get it. You think that writing something on a magical piece of paper stops things. You're dead wrong, and repeating yourself's not going to change that.
I mean, this is not rocket science. This is very, very straightforward stuff.
Oh yes, it's so straightforward. So straightforward that still we're having to discuss these things, having debates on the matter and trying to further different senses of right and wrong. But no, silly me, it's just so simple, straightforward, we just haven't seen it, right?
And remember back in February when Trump became president? And, well, actually, remember back when Newtown happened?
Really, dude? Standing on the graves of the people whose bodies aren't even cold when you recorded this podcast isn't enough for you? No, you gotta stand on the graves of the kids at Sandy Hook as well. Real fucking classy, Thom.
That's one of the reasons why I didn't want to make a video talking about the Vegas shooting specifically. Honestly, go watch Derek's video on his channel because he made a video a few weeks ago talking about it, and I agree with him on what he has to say on it.
People that are separated from other people, family members looking for each other. I'm seeing them posting on social media, posting on Twitter, saying, I lost my brother. If you guys have any information or if you've seen this, guys, please try to contact me. And then meanwhile, they're probably trying to look for updates, and they have to see stupid-ass posts about people shitting on white people or being grateful that it's actually a white person this time and it's not a brown person because, oh, you know, thank goodness we don't have to shit on Islamic terrorism. And people trying to debate on whether it's terrorism or lone gunmen or whatever. When I'm just like, the police and the investigators will figure that out. Why do you care so fucking much about that? You know, I'm seeing people say, my condolences, my sympathies, and all this stuff. And then in the very next sentence, they're like, oh, but we need to ban guns. We need to talk shit about the NRA. And I'm just like, dude, don't act like you actually care about these people if you're inserting your political agenda. Just, come on, try to put yourself in the victim's shoes.
Again, highly recommend that video if you guys have the time.
In Connecticut, I'm not talking about the Alex Jones saying that it was a false flag operation, although they're probably already saying that about Vegas right now.
Well, considering that you've got an anonymous poster nearly a month before the shooting on poll explaining the shooting in nearly perfect detail, and that despite there being over 2,000 security cameras as well as thousands of people in the immediate vicinity, no one noticed a guy or recorded a guy, even on the camera, let alone carrying hundreds of pounds worth of military-grade weaponry up to a room on the 32nd floor of one of the biggest hotels in Las Vegas. Personally, I don't see how you can think this isn't a false flag, but make of these facts what you will. I mean, there are so many blatant inconsistencies that even the media can't stick to one narrative for more than a couple of days. I think even the most blue-pilled of normies can tell that something is wrong here.
Well, so many people jumped on the story when it just happened, and many were coming to their own conclusions about it before it was even investigated further. And still today, there's no solid reasons as to why it happened.
I'm talking about when President Obama tried to pass any kind of reasonable gun control legislation.
Reasonable gun control legislation. Well, what is it? Is it reasonable or is it a gun control legislation? This is a very common propaganda tactic used by gun control advocates. They know their arguments are absolute trash, so instead of actually making their arguments, they just skip to saying how their arguments are reasonable.
Through Congress, and the Republicans absolutely obstructed all of it. And the NRA, you know, they were saying, hey, it's, you know, he got a bunch of dead kids. It's too soon to talk about gun control. Right. But President Obama did do something. He was able administratively, he didn't, you know, it didn't require Congress to do this. He was able administratively as the head of the executive branch to pass a rule that would cause the Social Security Administration to share with the FBI's National Instant Criminal Background Check System the names of people who are on Social Security disability because of mental illness.
So he signed an executive order to have the government target all mentally ill people, despite, of course, only 3 to 5% of all violent offenders having a mental illness, while simultaneously being 10 times more likely to be the victims of a violent crime. And that's your idea of a solution? What the fuck is wrong with you?
Now, this does not expose those names to the public. This is sharing them with the FBI, so that people who are so severely mentally disabled that they're living on Social Security disability for their mental illness could not buy weapons.
And mental illness, according to the government's own statistics, has nothing to do with shootings or violent crime in general. So what's your point? If anything, mentally ill people need more guns because they're more likely to be targeted by violent criminals.
Obama did that in response to Newtown. It was all he could do, right? Congress would not go along with assault weapons bans or anything. So he passed that rule. And guess what the Republicans did on February 2nd? They said, no, we've got to get rid of this rule. There were 75,000 people who were so mentally disabled that they were drawing Social Security benefits. And hey, that's 75,000 potential customers for the gun industry.
Holy fuck. Apparently Thom here thinks that mental illnesses are like some form of rage virus. He also doesn't understand that you can get on Social Security benefits with something as minor as depression. But no, according to the government, they can't work, though most of them can and are just choosing not to. You know what that means? It means they have more time to plot their attack.
So, as Joan McCarter writes over at Daily Kos, the Senate voted on February 15th, 57 to 43, to get rid of the rule. Trump signed it on February 28th. So now crazy people, or people who are so severely mentally disabled that they can't work, and they have jumped through all the hoops necessary to prove that disability so they qualify for Social Security disability, are able to buy all the guns they want since February. Where is there any actual accountability? Oh, it's all about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was passed for two reasons. Two principal reasons. I've got a piece up on Alternet about this right now. You can read it at alternet.org. The Second Amendment was passed for two reasons. The first reason, which was the original purpose of, why it was there and the whole conversation, and this was a conversation that started in correspondence between James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, and you can read it in the historical record in 1787-88, that Jefferson was strongly of the opinion that when the country was at peace, there should not be a standing army, because standing armies lead to military coups and they overthrow democracies.
So the Second Amendment should be overturned because of a hypothetical conversation which no one can even prove happened. Not to mention that the said opinion Jefferson supposedly displayed is extremely out of character, since Jefferson is famously an open opponent to the idea of democracy, and, he fought in a revolution against a tyrannical government. Are you sure that you aren't just making up some bullshit to project your own opinions onto a historical figure?
I mean, it's very well possible that he is, because it's very easy for people to do. Whether he is or not, worrying about what our founding fathers should have done or what they would have done now, to me, currently is kind of irrelevant. That doesn't really help the current predicament, nor really posits any solutions. I've seen Jefferson used as an example for both sides of this argument, and it doesn't get us anywhere.
And Madison was, okay, we'll do that. We'll put that in. But if you're not going to have a standing army, you're going to have a militia. You're going to have every person be a member of the army, even when it's not, when they're not marching around in uniform. You're going to have to do it the way that Switzerland's done it for hundreds of years.
You want to have a go at this, Agnostic? Because I'm at a loss for words.
I mean, Switzerland hasn't outright banned guns. Their system, while not perfect, has been one that has less gun-related crimes, and everyone there is required to own a gun. I mean, there's also regulations on said guns there, but I'm just kind of confused. I don't see how that helps your case, really. I'm just not understanding your idea of completely uprooting guns from our society when it comes to this dribble. Even though the most heavily regulated country on guns knows it isn't a good idea to completely yank that shit away. Ugh, and here we are debating about it yet again. It just sucks because I don't want it to seem like I'm pushing an agenda here like Thom is clearly doing.
And they were all like, yeah, of course. That's what we're going to do. So that was reason number one, was not to have standing armies during times of war. Reason no, and Jefferson, when Jefferson became president in 1800 or 1801, there were over 300,000 men in the military. And he reduced that down to like 6,000, which was ultimately not a good thing when it came to the War of 1812, but it's a whole nother story. But here we have these mass shootings, almost always committed by angry white men, by the way.
You're fucking a white male!
Of course, he had to drudge up that stupid point from the murky depths.
Somehow I suspect there's not going to be a big discussion in the media about what is it about angry white men?
Why should there be? What would be the point? What does that really have to do with the conversation at hand here?
What is it with you and your pathetic deflection tactics? First you brought up Sandy Hook, now identity politics on something which doesn't even have anything to do with identity.
That they're always shooting people, places up and things like that. We've got this from Jen Hayden over at Daily Kos. 91 people a day are killed by guns in the United States. 91 people a day.
Over 70 of those 91, by the way, are suicides or accidents.
On a side note as well, on average, 3,287 deaths occur a day on the road, also mostly caused by accidents, such as texting, eating, being distracted, these types of things. Yet I'm not seeing people having this big push to completely ban cars across the board. Personally, for me, how we regulate vehicles is a way we should regulate firearms, because hey, at least that's putting something on the table instead of taking it away wholeheartedly.
Now, people are calling this the worst gun massacre in American history. I would say that's probably not true. In fact, I would say that's almost certainly not true. It's the worst massacre of white people by white people in this country, arguably, outside of any specific, setting aside the Civil War and things like that. But white people have been massacring people of color, particularly Native Americans, from the get-go.
Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, I'm done with this. You can go ahead and take the rest, Agnostic.
I don't know, man. I just don't get Thom's race-baiting bullshit here. It doesn't add anything to the conversation. If anything, it just detracts from it. Way to make it about something that it's not, Thom. Really? You're really adding such a unique, well-formed position here.
And they've killed a hell of a lot more of them than this, 58 dead and 500 wounded at Mandalay Bay. So let's keep this in perspective. At a certain level, the chickens essentially are coming home to roost from our promoting this gun culture, this Wild West mentality, this you're not safe if you don't have a gun, and yet we're not safe because of all the guns. And there should be the ability to just kind of put two and two together here and figure out what's going on. I'd say it's time for us to either reinterpret, as the Supreme Court did in the Heller case, when they did it the wrong way, either reinterpret the Second Amendment or repeal it.
Well, if we have to reinterpret our Second Amendment rights, then we have to with the rest of the amendments. It doesn't start and stop at the second, but good luck in trying to have it completely repealed, because I don't see that happening anytime soon. But with that, I think we'll end the video here. Thanks everyone so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to check out Esoteric Entity's channel. His link will be in the description below. Thank you again for watching, and as always, we'll see all of you in our next video.